Welcome back, everybody, to another reaction video. Doing something a little different today. We're actually going to be looking at the Gettysburg animated battle map, and I highly recommend that you check these out. These are put out by the American Battlefield Trust, and they're an organization that's responsible for raising funds and then securing land of historic worth around the battlefields and making sure that it doesn't get sold to private developers to get turned into Walmarts and malls and things like that. So they're an absolutely essential organization to preserving history here in the United States. And they've put together these fantastic small tidbits on the various battles where they're involved in preserving history. And so this is the Battle of Gettysburg Map, and it not only shows a map, but it kind of talks through the Battle of Gettysburg. And I thought it would be a good jumping off point for us to have a conversation about the Battle of Gettysburg. So I'm going to watch bits of it and then just kind of add my own little things on top of what they're saying, just to kind of add to what they're doing. As always, please remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to have a say in future videos and topics that I take on, consider joining as a part of my supporters through Patreon. I'm going to be posting the first vote there at the end of making this video. And the folks who are already signed up to be patrons will have an opportunity to vote. You can sign up at any level, and you can have a say in whatever they vote for that will be my next video. So let's dive into this one today.
June 1863. 200,000 are dead, and the Civil War is barely half over. Now, General Robert E. Lee aims to move the war from Virginia and win a major battle in the North. He hopes to stoke the fire of a growing peace movement.
And one other aspect of this, too, is that, remember, meanwhile this is going on, also out west, you have Grant laying siege to Vicksburg. Since the end of May, he's surrounded Vicksburg. And Lee was actually being pressured to send some of his troops west to help relieve Vicksburg. And he felt that by the time those troops would have gotten there, Vicksburg will have fallen, that his best hope was to get north, win a battle in the north, and force the North to sue for peace, regardless of what happened at Vicksburg.
75,000-man Army of Northern Virginia moves swiftly into south-central Pennsylvania. Union General George Gordon Meade and his 95,000-strong Army of the Potomac moves toward Lee.
And Meade has been in command for all of like 3 or 4 days when the battle starts. He replaces Hooker. Hooker was fired. And rather than ask Meade if he wanted command, he was ordered to take command.
Lee concentrates his army where 10 roads converge. Gettysburg. Lee's move north will spark the largest battle in American history. It will last for 3 days.
And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Not the largest battle in American history. The bloodiest battle in American history. But I think Gettysburg, in terms of numbers of troops involved, was not even one of the 3 biggest battles of the American Civil War. Fredericksburg was the largest battle fought during the Civil War. About 200,000 were involved there. Maybe 10 or 15,000 less than that at Gettysburg.
The battle starts west of Gettysburg. Union General John Buford's cavalrymen shoot at lead elements of Confederate General Henry Heath's division before falling back as Heath advances.
So Buford had gotten here the day before. And so actually Heath had as well. They had both kind of scouted the area, and then Heath had actually pulled his lead elements back and then made a decision he was going to advance on the town in the morning. Buford has 2 brigades of cavalry. He's got Gamble and Devon. The rest of the cavalry is nowhere to be found. Buford's kind of the lead scout for the left wing of the army under command of General Reynolds. And he recognizes the importance of the ground. He recognizes the importance of the town and decides that he's going to make a stand west of town. Now, this is a gutsy thing to do with 2,400 men when you know that there are 2 corps marching down that road in your direction and a 3rd corps coming down from the north. All of Lee's army is concentrating in your direction. But Buford had 2 things going for him. He had the element of surprise, and he had the high ground on the weapons. So I guess 3 things. He had repeating rifles, which would allow him, at least for a while, to hold against superior numbers. He had good ground, and Heath didn't know he was actually going to run into the Army of the Potomac. He thought it was just some local militia because Pennsylvania had been raising a bunch of short-term militia units to help in the defense of the state with this invasion going on.
Buford holds near Gettysburg until General John Reynolds' 1st Corps arrives. Infantry against infantry, fighting intensifies on both sides of the Chambersburg Pike. As the highest-ranking Union officer on the field,
second in command of the army,
John Reynolds escalates the battle as he desperately tries to support Buford. While ordering a Wisconsin regiment forward, he is shot in the back of the neck and killed.
So I believe it was the 6th Wisconsin that he was encouraging forward, one of the brigades of one of the regiments of the Iron Brigade. It was the Iron Brigade, I think, on the left, and it was Lysander Cutler's brigade on the right. Solomon Meredith was in command of the Iron Brigade. Those were the 2 brigades of Wadsworth Division, and it was at that point that they knew they were dealing with the Army of the Potomac because they saw the distinctive black hats of the Iron Brigade and knew who they were dealing with because they had faced each other before. Reynolds arrives with these 2 lead brigades just as Gamble and Devon, Buford's brigades, can't hold any longer. So they're able to pull back and kind of go to the flanks to cover against any flanking attacks. And so then Reynolds kind of moves the rest of his men into position. Reynolds is in command of the entire left wing of the army, which means that, at least for that point, the 1st Corps, was actually under command of Abner Doubleday.
Just as the battle begins to escalate, Confederate General Robert Rhodes' division arrives on Oak Hill. Though his division is twice the size of his opponent, Rhodes' initial attacks are poorly coordinated.
This was just an abject failure at the brigade command level. These initial divisions are under Ewell. These brigade commanders just derelict in their duty in every way. They were very poor in their coordination of these attacks. They probably could have turned Robinson's division of the 1st Corps before the 11th Corps could have gotten to position, and they probably could have had a lot more success on the first day, but they failed miserably.
And repulsed. Then, General Jubal Early's division arrives from the northeast. Despite Union reinforcements, Rhodes and Early managed to break their right flank. Yankees are fighting a losing battle on the left, too. After a savage firefight in Herbst Woods, they fall back to Seminary Ridge. Cannons and small arms blast the attacking rebels, reinforced by Dorsey Pender's division.
So again, for the 2nd straight battle, Oliver Howard's corps finds himself breaking under the weight of a Confederate attack. It was Howard's corps that was kind of out floating in the air on the right flank of the Union Army at Chancellorsville that was hit by that surprise attack by Stonewall Jackson that everybody loves to talk about and that was portrayed in the movie Gods and Generals. And then it's Howard's corps that breaks first, even though they came in later than the 1st Corps did. The 1st Corps suffers like 50% casualties, but they hold on the left. It's only when Howard breaks on the right that the 1st Corps breaks on the left. But a lot of people, despite all of that, I think Howard was viewed as a solid commander because he was, unlike a lot of Union generals who failed miserably at times during the war, Howard goes on to continue to have important commands, especially in the West under Grant and Sherman. So I don't think these 2 bad battles for him tainted his reputation because he was still very highly regarded as a commander. And he kind of pinned this on Doubleday.
And the Union line collapses. Some escape via an unfinished railroad bed. Others are trapped in Gettysburg streets. The defeated Yankees reform on Cemetery Hill, where General Howard has left a brigade and an array of cannons. The Confederates probe, but do not attack.
And there's the mistake of the battle right there. Because right here is, over here is Culp's Hill. And the Confederates had an opportunity to take that. And that's the real famous message that Lee gave to Ewell. Because remember, Hill and Ewell, the 2nd and 3rd Corps, well, Hill's the 3rd Corps, Ewell's the 2nd Corps. They're both brand new to Corps Command. Before this, there were 2 corps. There was Longstreet, the 1st Corps, and Jackson, the 2nd Corps. Lee reorganizes the entire army and puts it into 3 corps. And he's treating Ewell and Hill as he would his other corps commander, but they don't respond the same way. He tells Ewell to take that hill if practicable. And Jackson would have taken that to mean, go get that hill. But Ewell felt, we've been fighting all day, and Ewell gets a real bad rap for that, but it was understandable under the circumstances. They had done really well, and he felt like he'd done enough. First time in battle as a corps commander. But he should have taken the hill. And this is, at this point, I think the battle was pretty well decided.
In the afternoon, Union General Dan Sickles moves his 3rd Corps to the Peach Orchard and the Emmitsburg Road, where he thought he could better use his artillery.
So this is because of an earlier battle where Sickles, I think it might have been Chancellorsville, Sickles had a decent position, but in front of him was higher ground. And the Confederates put artillery on that higher ground. They were firing down on Sickles' position. And so if you go to the Gettysburg battlefield today and you stand where Sickles was supposed to be positioned on the southern end of Cemetery Ridge, you can look ahead and you can see that where the Peach Orchard is significantly higher in elevation. And so I can see what he saw there. But you can see what he did by doing that. Now, some people argue that Sickles actually probably saved the Union Army by advancing, because when Longstreet advances with, he's got Hood's division over here and McLaws' division right here, he's expecting this line to be here, and he's expecting that Hood's going to be able to get around and hit them on the flank. Well, he runs into them far sooner than he was expecting to.
But this creates a lengthy bulge in the Union line, and Sickles lacks the men to defend it. General Meade is forced to send his entire 5th Corps and parts of others to reinforce Sickles, opening gaps in his center and on his right. General Lee orders Longstreet to make the main attack upon the Union left. General Hill is to threaten the center, and General Ewell is to assault the Union right. Longstreet's divisions under John Bell Hood and Lafayette McLaws line up on Seminary Ridge, along with Richard Anderson's division of Hill's Corps, ready to make the assault. It is one of the hottest days of the year. Advancing under a hail of fire, Hood's brigades commingle and split apart. Some slamming the 3rd Corps troops at Devil's Den, while others assault Little Round Top, where just arrived 5th Corps soldiers await them.
Now, if you want to know a lot more detail about Longstreet's assault on the 2nd Corps, or on the second day of the battle that we're talking about there, I was in Gettysburg about a year ago, in January of last year, and I retraced the steps of Longstreet's attack. It's about a 45-minute video. I'll put a link down in the description for you, including me kind of attacking up Little Round Top. There was nobody on the battlefield that day. It was completely empty, so it was a great day to kind of walk through and talk through in detail and let you see firsthand what the battle looks like. So I'm not going to talk too much about this here because you can watch that video and see more.
Both sides send in reinforcements. Control of Devil's Den changes hands 3 times. Alabama and Texas soldiers charge Little Round Top again and again, but fall back. At last, a bayonet charge by Maine troops sends the exhausted attackers back for good. The Union's extreme left flank is secure. Meade scrambles reinforcements from the 2nd and 5th Corps to support Sickles. As McLaws' Confederate division enters the fray, the action shifts toward the Peach Orchard, which falls quickly. The fight for the wheat field nearby is less decisive, changing hands 6 times in some of the battle's bloodiest combat. Hood and McClaw's men push on toward Cemetery Ridge, joined by part of Anderson's division. There, troops that vacated to reinforce Sickles have left a half-mile gap near the Union center. The Union Army can be cut in 2, but reinforcements via interior lines save the day.
Oh, are they not even going to talk about it? So everybody, when they're talking about the July 2nd battle, loves to talk about the 20th Maine and what they did on Little Round Top. And I'm not downplaying what they did. It was Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who was not a career soldier. It was his first day, first battle in command of the 20th Maine. His colonel previous to that was Adelbert Ames, who was now at this point in the battle on July 2nd, he's an acting division commander in the 11th Corps. He was a brigade commander in Francis Barlow's brigade or in division, but Barlow was wounded and captured. So Chamberlain did a great job, but no less important, and maybe even more so, is the actions of the 1st Minnesota. So as Anderson's division is marching across here, there's this gap in the line, and Meade has called for reinforcements from the right, but they haven't arrived yet. And there's this brigade, maybe 2 brigades, marching across toward this center here, and they're threatening to cut the army in 2. And Meade goes up to 262 men from the 1st Minnesota, Colonel William Colville in command. And he tells Colville to he points to the brigade and he says, take those colors. And Colville charges his 260 men into an entire brigade, 1,300 plus Confederate soldiers, and he buys time for these reinforcements to plug that gap. And when the battle was over, only 47 Maine men were still fit for duty. It was the highest casualty rate for any Union regiment during the entire Civil War in a single battle. And amazingly, they were still there on July 3rd and helped defend for Pickett's charge.
The exhausted rebels are pushed back. Other Confederates renew efforts to capture Little Round Top, entering what comes to be called the Valley of Death.
And if you go there, and you'll see this on my other video, it's brutal ground. It's a terrible place to try and march across. There's little boulders everywhere. It's difficult terrain. Even when I went there to visit, just walking across it was exhausting, and I almost broke my ankle 6 times. I can't imagine attacking across that.
They too are thrown back. The fighting finally ceases on the south end of the battlefield. In what General Longstreet termed the best 3 hours fighting ever done by any troops on any battlefield. More than 14,000 men became casualties of war, and the battle is far from over.
And there was still fighting on the right as well over at Culp's Hill. I don't know if they'll talk about that or not.
At dusk, General Ewell moves on the Union right. 2 of Jubal Early's brigades sweep toward Cemetery Hill, obscured by the gathering darkness. The Union line is thinly held by battle-weary 11th Corps soldiers. Louisianans and North Carolinians overwhelm them. Portions of East Cemetery Hill are captured. Meade's army will lose the battle if Cemetery Hill falls. But Union reinforcements surge onto the hill before Confederates can exploit their gains. Early's men are thrown back as General Edward Johnson's division moves to attack Culp's Hill.
So you can see why I said that at the end of the first day that the battle had pretty much been decided, because the fact that the Union occupied this fishhook position is what won them the battle. Because you can see over and over again they break. Over and over again, the Confederates gain the upper hand, but quick reinforcements from other areas of the battlefield turn the tide, and a counterattack pushes the Confederates back. That is not possible if the roles are reversed and the Union has the outer lines and the Confederates have these interior lines. It's because of that ability to grab quick reinforcements that they're able to do that. And of course, if this attack had all been coordinated, if everything, the whole lines had been attacked all at once, that wouldn't have been possible either. One of the men who was wounded severely, and actually mortally wounded, on Cemetery Hill that second day was a 40-something-year-old Ohio soldier named George Nixon. And Nixon's laying out in the middle of the battlefield crying out for help. And I can't remember the man's name, but there was actually a fellow soldier of his that crawled out onto the battlefield and picked him up and dragged him to safety and received the Medal of Honor for his actions. I don't remember the soldier's name, but the reason I know the story is because George Nixon, who died of his wounds despite the heroism of his friend, was the great-grandfather of future President Richard Nixon. He died at Gettysburg. He's buried there at the National Cemetery.
Most of the breastworks on Culp's Hill are empty.
I want to say the
Their
guy's name was
brigades
Enderlin.
sent to reinforce Sickles. Only 1,300 Union soldiers under General George Sears Greene remained to face Johnson's attacking 4,500.
I think Greene was the oldest general in the Union Army, and what he did at Gettysburg was fantastic, this stand at Culp's Hill. Of course, he had a great position.
Greene's men hold firm against numerous nighttime assaults, but some of Johnson's men gain a foothold in the abandoned trenches on the lower hill. By 10 p.m., the day's fighting comes to a halt. The past 2 days have borne 37,000 casualties. By now, Gettysburg is the bloodiest battle of the war. And another day of horrible combat is yet to come. General Lee sees an opportunity, hoping to take Culp's Hill in a morning assault. He adds 3 brigades to bolster his left, but General Meade has ordered the return of the 5 brigades that left Culp's Hill to aid Sickles. Bolstered by a stream of reinforcements, Lee is badly outnumbered.
I gotta say, for his first time in command of an army, Meade made all the right decisions when it came to shifting forces around, because he did a lot of that. He's constantly shifting reinforcements from one place to another, and it seems like every time the Confederates attacked somewhere, Meade was one step ahead of Lee and knew what was coming, and that includes what happens on July 3rd.
For 7 hours, the battle rages. Initial Union attacks are stymied, including an ill-fated move near Spangler Spring. But by 11 a.m., the Union numbers weigh too heavily, and the Confederates are forced out of their captured entrenchments.
People forget that it wasn't just Pickett's charge on July 3rd, that there was this pretty substantial fight for Culp's Hill. And then, of course, you have the cavalry for the Confederates under Jeb Stuart trying to make this flank attack to come around and hit the Union from the rear when they're met by Union cavalry at the East Cavalry Battlefield, they call it. It's about 4 miles east of Gettysburg.
Lee now orders a massive assault upon the Union center. General George Pickett leads the only fresh division in Lee's army, and he forms the core of the attack under Longstreet's command.
Yeah, all the other troops had already fought.
Meade is ready, having anticipated such a move the night before. He is the first Union Army commander to decisively outguess Robert E. Lee.
Yep, he was a step ahead of him every time.
At 1 p.m., Lee bombards the Union defenses, hoping to soften them up. Meade responds, and together, they create the largest artillery barrage in the Western Hemisphere. Ultimately, Lee's bombardment fails.
Most of Lee's shots were landing back behind the Union lines. Meade's headquarters was right there in the center of where it was all falling. And it was said that it could be heard at Harrisburg, which I think is like 35 miles away.
Nevertheless, Pickett's attack commences at 3 p.m. 12,000 men emerge from Seminary Ridge. They must cross 1 mile of open ground. Union artillery opens at long range and tears gaps in the Confederate line. Meade orders more than 20,000 reinforcements to converge upon the center. Ohio, New York, and Vermont troops position themselves upon the flank of the Confederate advance. The Confederates are moving into a great pincer of Yankees.
Yeah, up on the northern end of the attack, on the left flank of the Confederates, you had, I think, the 8th Ohio, who gets out on the flank. You have Stannard's Vermont Brigade that gets on the flank on the southern side. And just in addition to the canister fire and the deadly rifle fire in front of them, they're getting fired at from either side as well.
Southerners enter rifle range, and fewer than half cross the Emmetsburg Road. But with second and third line troops coming up, some manage to breach the Union position. A ferocious melee ensues. As tens of thousands of Union reinforcements arrive, the Confederate attackers dwindle. Lee's men don't stand a chance.
So in Pickett's division alone, all three of his brigade commanders are down. Armistead is mortally wounded and captured. Garnett is never seen again. He was probably killed in such a way as to have not been able to be identified. Kemper is the only one who makes it back to the Confederate lines, and he is thought to be mortally wounded. He was the Speaker of the House of Virginia, and later on Governor of Virginia. And he was wounded severely, and he thought it was mortal, but he did actually, in fact, survive, and he was brought back to his lines. I think something like 12 of the 13 colonels in Pickett's division were killed or wounded. It was just absolutely brutal. Armistead had been good friends with Winfield Scott Hancock, who was in command of the 2nd Corps at the center, and a bullet had hit Hancock's saddle on his horse and actually had deflected a nail from the saddle into Hancock's hip. It was a very severe wound, and it was thought for a while he might not survive. And so when Armistead is mortally wounded, the two of them and John Reynolds had all been in the same unit, had officers together in the same unit, and were good friends. And, of course, Reynolds is killed. Hancock is thought to be possibly mortally wounded, and Armistead's mortally wounded. Interestingly, at the time, Hancock's wound looked worse than Armistead's, but Hancock survives and Armistead doesn't. But Armistead was, just heartbroken over the fact that he wouldn't get to see his friend one last time.
Those who cross the stone wall are either killed or captured. Lee's great moment of opportunity has become his greatest defeat, by far. Scarcely half of the men who made the attack returned to Seminary Ridge. As events unfold in the center, cavalrymen are active on the flanks. In hopes of threatening the Union rear, Confederate General Jeb Stuart's horsemen try to swing around the Union Army. They are stopped east of Gettysburg by Union cavalrymen under General David M. Gregg. General George Custer leads a charge of Michiganders that highlights the repulse.
Yeah, Custer made a name for himself.
Union cavalry hit the Confederate flank and rear with no success. Charge and countercharge produced no real result for either side.
And I believe Elon Farnsworth, who was commanding part of Kilpatrick's attack here, was actually killed in this charge. It was just a terrible idea and really had no hope of success.
The Battle of Gettysburg is over. Lee has lost, but remains on the field. He hopes to repulse a counterattack on July 4th to even the odds. Meade does not take the bait. That night, Lee pulls back through the mountains to the Potomac River. His lumbering wagon train of wounded is miles long. Meade plans to attack, but Lee's river position is too strong. The Army of Northern Virginia, beaten as it had never been beaten before, moves back into Virginia. And the war will go on another 21 months.
All right, so I'm going to wrap it up right there. I would love to hear your thoughts about what we've talked about the Battle of Gettysburg. I have a number of videos from my visits to the battlefield at Gettysburg. I live about 4 hours away from there. But please, in particular, check out the one from my retracing of Longstreet's attack. I think it'll be worth your time if you want to see a vlog from the battlefield. Let me know your thoughts. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And please consider checking out Patreon. I'm going to be posting a couple of choices for my next Sabaton video that I'm going to do a reaction to, and I want to get your feedback, and whatever you guys vote on, that'll be the video that I go with. So thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.